That's it, okay?
Okay.
All right, now you have 12 people sitting there, and one's a nurse, and one's a grandma, and one's a retired engineer, and one is a whatever, okay? A teacher, and a baker, and a candlestick maker, okay? And everybody's sitting there in a room. And as they're sitting in that room deliberating after all these months of hearing all this mumbo-jumbo, and they're trying to figure out what it means and everything, and somebody in that room says, you know, I see what happened, and he did, he administered too much medication and sedatives and the propofol, and it wasn't right. But, I don't think he really did it deliberately with malice aforethought, which is second-degree murder. I don't think he thought about it in advance, and he deliberately did that. That's the end of your guilty verdict.
Yes, exactly. And that's why, the prosecution, and that's one of the things we were discussing here at the show, that we always thought that was one of the reasons that they went with involuntary, because they probably couldn't have got him on that second degree.
Well, they'd have a big problem. And if you think about it, just put yourself in a room with 12 people and try to get them to all agree.
Yeah.
Okay, number one.
2 people.
Then number two, you're asking them to put someone away to prison.
Right.
Now, you get them based on speculation. They weren't in the room. They have no one in the room to give you any witness testimony. So you got to speculate that he did this with some kind of malice aforethought, that he thought about this in advance and decided he was going to kill Michael Jackson with drugs. Now, you have got to be kidding that you think there's not going to be a few people sitting on a jury that are going to say, I don't know.
Right.
I have a doubt about that.
Right.
Especially when they have lawyers that are paid to create that doubt.
Right.
It's just not fair. And so what would happen is Mary walks free.
Right.
And then what?
Then what? Yeah. So I want to getting back to Michael Jackson's trial and all of this.
Well, one thing I do want to finish with one question, Carlotta, which is you asked about whether or not I think Michael's alive, or this whole idea that he. Clearly you don't believe that.
I think that if anyone can pull it off, he could. But at this, we are open-minded here on the series. We have a whole show where these investigators come on. We let them come on and talk and share, because we're the people. We say, hey, listen, this is possible. Anything can happen in this world. We believe truth is stranger than fiction. Who knows? I wouldn't say never. So. But I know that there are people who are definitely saying that, there are people who are out for money. Now, the people I know that's doing the investigation, they don't think they haven't made any money. But there are people out there who have made a lot of money from it.
From what? Really?
Right. So, but the people that have been on our show have been pretty legit. They're really fans.
But let me address it though, because I really feel strongly about it that Michael Jackson loved his children more than life itself, and that Michael Jackson wanted to be there for his children in every way, shape, and form. And there's no way, I can't even fathom it, that this man who lived for children and lived for his children would stage a death and put them through that kind of grief, okay? All right? And have them be without a father when he was about to come back and take over a stage and be at the highlight of his life. What? I mean, it goes against anything and everything that Michael was about, to do that to his own family. And remember, I sat behind the Jackson family at the Murray hearing. I was sitting right behind Catherine and Janet and Randy and Tito and Joe. I was sitting behind them. And I also sat with them and behind them at the hearing of the custody hearing back in time.
Right.
I mean, I watched Catherine shedding tears and Janet holding her arms around Catherine to calm her down. I mean, and Catherine's such a class act. I mean, it was just, minimal tears. There was no wailing or anything, but they were real tears. I mean, her son is dead. I mean,
I'm glad you're addressing this community, because there are people out there who really they hold on to this fact, and they really think so. So I'm glad you're addressing it to people, because I think people out there, that's one of the things that people wanted to know, if some way you thought something like that. So, I'm glad you're clearing up what you believe about that. That's very good, because you have an insight.
I'm there with the family.
Right. And you have an inside look into it, right? Very inside.
I mean, you think that Michael would let, as much as he loved his children and his mother more than life, you think he would let his mother sit there and cry and be sorry and sad to the point of complete depression and despair and all of this for what? What possible impetus would he have to do this to his family? And we're not talking about the external family, his brothers and sisters, or even father.
Right.
His kids and his mom. Why would he do this?
Right. So that's a good point. That's a very good point. And I believe that there are those in the probably who in that community who created this community of, like, the Elvis is Alive community, the host community would say they think they're in on it. Has always been their answer.
They may think they're in on it, but Frank DeLeo told me, and if you saw the series True Crime that I did on Michael Jackson, we had a conversation about him being at the UCLA Medical Center with Michael Jackson on being held alive on ventilators, and that Catherine arrived and gave the signal to take him off the artificial life support. DeLeo was physically there, and then had to tell Michael's children that their daddy was gone.
Because Frank told the children. Yes, that's right. Yeah, and that was a real moment.
And Frank DeLeo's been in Michael's life since bad.
Right.
And
Frank DeLeo's been around a long time. A thriller.
The days before Michael bought Neverland. I mean, this is a man who was at the trial every day in Santa Maria because he loved Michael and cared so much about Michael.
So what do you make of what do you make of now the family saying, certain members of the family, I can never tell with the Jacksons, but with certain members of the family now being mad at Frank DeLeo?
Well, what are they mad about?
I mean, the last, it's the conspiracy thing coming up again. Everybody's wondering how did Frank get hired back. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's Joe talking. Sometimes it's Randy talking.
I dealt with Joe. And, when Joe's talking, you better put some salt on it. A lot of salt on it.
I love that.
I mean it. I mean, he's looking for attention. I mean, wasn't it so obvious after Michael died? I mean, Joe was there promoting his records and whatever, and going to the BET Awards and whatever, and I mean, he was like, I know he's in shock, and I know he loved his son, and I did deal with him, one-on-one a couple times, but he's got an agenda, and that agenda has to do with him making a living off of his son. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's what Michael would say the same thing. Michael knew that. That's why Michael left him out of the will.
And can I want to ask you this about the trial, too. There were tapes on YouTube, and I don't know, were they ever released? Some people say they're from the trial, and that explains a lot about Joseph and Michael's relationship. The Glenda tapes, where the wife had taped, they were supposed to be used for the trial, I guess, to prove Michael wasn't gay, or something. It was tapes where he's talking to a lady on the phone. I heard they never got to use them, but they were tapes where he has long conversations and he explains the relationship about Joe. Did they ever? I mean, have you ever heard anything about those tapes? Because a lot of people want to know if those were real or not. Because
I have not heard about those tapes. I don't. If they exist, they weren't brought into the trial. Mm-hmm. But there is outtake footage of Michael that no one has seen that we saw at trial. And I'm going to incorporate some of what Michael said in the new version of Michael Jackson Conspiracy, actually, because that's the most important thing, is to hear Michael uncut. And he talks about his fear of his father. He talks about things that, happened to him with the media and just all kinds of different things that he is very candid about. But in talking about his father, it's evident that Michael was not only fearful of his father, but he he really, it didn't have anything to do with Joe, from what I can see in the latter part of his life. I mean, he didn't want anything to do with his father anymore. His father would traumatize him.
So you think it was just one of those relationships with Joe? Because he seemed like he was coming to terms with him at the end of his days. But yeah, I've heard several things about those tapes, and they say they just say so much about Joe and his relationship with Michael. So I'll be glad to see the new book and to see the updated version and what you put in there about Michael and Joseph, because I think that would be really eye-opening, especially in light of just all the accusations and how Michael can be so childlike. And I think people don't understand that, and that was so much a big part of the trial. People don't understand Michael is a kid at heart. He really never grew up. So I think people when they think about, oh, how can he sleep with kids and how can he do this, he's not thinking like us adults. He's thinking in terms of a child.
Yep.
And I want to ask you before, you go, I definitely want to ask you, in light of the death of Michael Jackson, how do you see everything now? The book you've written, that trial, where did it play? What role did it play in the death of Michael Jackson? Do you think that was?
Well, I honestly believe that trial was a defining moment for Michael Jackson in terms of changing his life forever, and the fact that he could do a documentary with all the hopes of, recreating himself and showing people that he had been good to children, that he's a good guy, and it turning into not only a mockery of him, but then a criminal allegation that became a criminal trial where he was fighting for his life. And watching everybody from Debbie Rowe to Bob Jones to back again to this one and that one come forward to say horrible things about him when he was good to all these people.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I mean, forgetting, as I talked earlier, about the physical stamina that one had to have to just be in that surrounding all those months. But could you imagine if it was you on trial for something you didn't do, and you had the entire media there from all over the planet, and all they were doing was picking on your every move, and at the same time you watching anybody that you've ever helped in your life or that's worked for you that can figure out a way to make a buck, because some of them were peddling their own books. Bob Jones was peddling his own book at the time, which he brought out during the trial, and I mean everybody had their own agenda, and come forward and stand there in front of God and the jury and the judge and everybody else and the media from all over the world and just lie and just trash you and just, I mean, imagine what that would do to your spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in the end, I mean, that has such a bearing on him. After that, Michael Jackson never looked the same to me.
He wasn't the same after that, and that's just it. I mean, he wasn't the same. How could you be? I mean, why do you think he went to Bahrain and then he went to Ireland? He couldn't get far enough away from the United States. I mean, this is a place that the people, hated him. The media hated him. The public opinion was against him. It didn't matter that he'd been exonerated. His closest friends, confidants, whatever it was, were helping the prosecution. Debbie Rowe was helping the prosecution. I mean, he had to feel like he didn't have a friend in the world, and he didn't have certainly a friend in this country, and he got as far away from it as he could. And, really, when you think about it, he died trying to make a comeback, trying to come back. And even then, it wasn't going to be in this country. It was going to be in England.
It was going to be in England, yeah.
And he had lost his only haven, his safe haven, his estate in Santa Barbara County. He couldn't go back home again. What is life like when you don't have a home to go to anymore?
Right.
You're living in rental houses.
Well, the last 5 minutes, I want to get a question in from a listener she's a regular on here, and she's a big Michael Jackson fan, and she wants to ask you a question. And I want to get her in. Do you mind answering a question for her?
Of course not. Sure.
Okay, just let me get her in. Hello, caller. You're on the line. Welcome to the Carlotta Chatwood Show. I know you've been waiting a while. Hello? Hello?
I don't hear her.
Hello? She's not. Oh, I don't think she's been waiting for a minute. So, okay, well, she's not there. We tried, caller. they call sometimes from all around the world when they know Michael. There's a question about Michael Jackson or anything. When people heard you were going to be on, we had people from all around the world writing wonderful things and saying, they were very happy that someone was going to come on to take up the case for Michael and to prove that Michael was innocent. And we had so many people join this book club. So, we were very happy and honored to have your book as our first book. Thank you so much, Aphrodite, for a wonderful interview. And I hope you come back again.